Every person is extraordinary and unique, yet some are in fields that we know by definition make them extraordinary and unique. And Dr. Rhea Seddon's astronaut, physician, surgeon, philanthropist, speaker, she's extraordinary in all of those dimensions. Just thinking about becoming an astronaut, a couple of years ago, there were 18,300 applicants for the astronaut corps. The selection was going to be winnowed down to approximately 15. So stop and think about that. That is between roughly 0.05%, not 5%, 0.05%. To put that in some kind of contrast, about 36,000 people apply to Harvard and 1,800 are accepted. So becoming an astronaut is extraordinary. To be one of the first female astronauts, even more so. And yet what I was struck in listening to Rhea was her sense of both humility and strength. She's quite open about hitting the roadblocks and discussing which ones knocked her off her footing and how she had to really rethink and regroup to make that work. In particular, I was impressed with the illustration of what it took physically just to become an astronaut, that she had to come to the realization that I can't do this right now, and I am going to wash out. I am not going to make it as an astronaut. So she said, okay, is it possible? And that's the real lesson here. First of all, is something hard possible? If it's possible, then we can begin to develop a plan to get there. So she said, I'm going to work on it. Incredible story about that. Even more impressive to me was when she spoke about her experiences in medical school, the first woman in the surgery program, and how she was told women are not allowed in the doctor's lounge. She said, you don't always know bias until it's spoken. And that's very true. Sometimes when we're hitting a roadblock, there's a bias that we don't know about. It's unspoken. In her case, it was spoken. And she could have gone to battle at that point and been dismissed, or she could have backed up and said, what's the bigger picture here? And that's exactly what she did. If she had gone to battle on that particular point, it's possible it would be a footnote in history somewhere, but it's also possible it would have made no impact, no difference, and she would have missed out on the opportunity to really forge a path as a female surgeon, which is the greater impact on history. So it's not being in the surgery program, it's graduating, it's becoming a surgeon. So she had the ability as a very young person to keep the bigger picture in mind, which is so important. When she spoke about challenges, realizing that they are ultimately survivable, that we can get through them if we have mentors, if we have people that believe in us, and realize that some things are just going to take time. Like so many of us, I watched the Challenger accident as it occurred, less than 90 seconds after takeoff. And yet for her, these were friends, colleagues, people that she knew well. And the aftermath for her and her fellow astronauts was the program might well be discontinued. I can remember congressional probes and lots of calls to defund NASA. It's not worth it. It's a waste of money, and now it's a waste of lives. And yet, from their standpoint, they couldn't do anything to influence the legislation. All they could do was stay the course, do the best that they could. And it continued, and what a difference maker it has been. Our space program goes up and down in terms of funding, in terms of emphasis, in terms of importance, and it will always have its detractors. But there's not any question that when Neil Armstrong stepped out onto the moon in the summer of 1969, that it galvanized the attention of the world, that things are possible, things can be done. And throughout her career, Rhea has absolutely done that. I loved what she said, that mediocrity is just not in her genes, that for a person who was growing up in the 50s, have a dad that would say, you can be anything you want to do. Just do your best at it, whatever you do. That's a parenting lesson right there, isn't it? It's so key. So the fact that she sees life as a continuum, as a journey, that there's all kinds of things that are yet to be accomplished, is tremendously impressive to me. So she is, in my opinion, an authentic hero for the history books, but in another sense, she's a hero in terms of how she's living her life, coping with the challenges, putting things in perspective, always keeping the bigger picture, and with a great sense of humor, a great demeanor, and a great outlook. So what an inspirational time it's been. So whenever we're faced with our own brick at the bottom of the pool, and we don't know how we're going to get it to the top, the first thought is it even possible? And most of the time, it is. We don't know how. We don't know precisely when it'll occur, but once we decide it's possible, we can figure out the hard work, the perseverance, the method. So this is Dan Moore. Thank you so much for being with us on The Action Catalyst.